Thank you, Cadoba Delta, for allowing us to narrate this story. The heat of the rising sun radiated all throughout the blue afternoon sky. The air had an unpleasant stickiness to it. He could feel beads of sweat forming at the back of his neck. Blades of grass and weeds were crushed against his cheek. The ground itself was quite warm and moist. With a sore grunt, he managed to roll onto his backside. His tired eyes stared up at the cloudless blue sky above. His chest heaved up and down. Each breath sent pangs of pain shooting through his body. A broken rib? Quite possible. His memory was hazy, but it seemed like he was thrown from his seat with sufficient force. His clothing felt damp there. Blood? Truthfully, he was surprised he even survived the whole ordeal. It was only now that he noticed his helmet was missing. He didn't know the exact composition of this world's atmosphere, but the air at least seemed breathable and adequately rich in oxygen. He drew in another breath. Strength formed in his lungs and flowed to every inch of his body. Correction, very oxygen-rich. He lay there for some time, taking in the planet's air. Sensation returned to his shoulders first, followed by his arms and then his legs. The sun climbed higher and higher into the sky. It was quickly becoming hot out. He had to get out of his flight suit, ideally sooner rather than later. Fuck. With a concerted grimace, he tried to stand up. His legs instantly buckled, and he collapsed to the grass. He tried again, and this time he was able to get to his feet. It took him a moment to gain his balance. It seemed like it had been forever since he last stood on solid ground. Sweat drizzled down his forehead and his neck. He haggardly tore off his flight jacket, leaving just his sweat-dampened undershirt. He caressed his injured side. No break, at least none that he could tell, but a sobering gash. He scanned the environment. He'd landed in a field of some kind. Trees bordered the outskirts of the field, beyond which stood a forest. He spotted the remains of his pilot's seat near the tree line. Beyond the forest and behind a large hill rose a plume of smoke. Surely his craft, or whatever was left of it anyway. There wasn't so much as a hint of civilization as far as the eye could see. He paused when he heard a faint voice calling his name. It seemed to be coming from the ground? Commander David Reyes, are you there? David spotted his glowing earpiece nestled between blades of grass. He bent down and inserted the device into his ear. I'm here, Gaia. A wave of relief crashed upon the AI's feminine voice inside the device. Thank God, Commander. I was beginning to think you were. Dead? Well, I almost was, he said, glancing back towards the plume of smoke. He let out a tired breath. Where are we? I'm not quite sure, Commander. Do you recall the battle in the Veranium system? Yes, he did. It was all coming back now. What began as a small skirmish between two opposing scout ships in an other inconspicuous patch of space quickly morphed into an all-out death match between enemy navies. The entire system was raised. As more forces piled in, the balance began to tip against their favor, prompting the order to retreat. Yeah, I do. He nodded, examining his injury. What the hell happened? We were supposed to regroup at Eden 4. Let me see, Gaia said. She was silent for a moment. What's Unfortunately, Commander, I cannot recover the flight data. David finished wrapping a makeshift dressing around his wound. Why's that? Gaia is an artificial intelligence designed to manage, track, and assist various efforts of humanity's war efforts against the Federation. I am merely a scion of this AI. Most data not involving you personally is stored on servers back on Earth. Because I cannot connect to the stream, my present form is only a localized copy of Gaia, and as such, I do not have direct access to the data that can readily determine our location. David rubbed his temples. All right, what's that mean exactly? No, she huffed. I don't know where we are, and unless we manage to wade into more charted waters where I have access to the stream, which are likely thousands of light years away, I have no way of independently determining our location. David scoffed. Well, thanks a lot. My remaining in the company of humans has been proven to benefit their esteem and well-being, so I would recommend you stick with me, Gaia said. In the meantime, we may be able to recover some flight data stored on your ship's wreckage. David looked back at the plume of smoke beyond the hill. The wreckage was 10 miles away, at the very least. fuck. I concur, Commander, Gaia said. She was silent for a moment. If you don't believe you can walk that distance in your present condition, I propose an alternative. Perhaps at night we will have an adequate view of the night sky. Given ideal atmospheric conditions, it's possible that I can juxtapose known stellar landmarks, thereby determining our approximate location. David considered her offer briefly. No, I can walk. There might be stuff I can scavenge from the wreckage anyway. Then it is settled, she said, though I suppose you should start your trek sooner rather than later. The crash site is located approximately 15 miles away. Based on my calculations, dusk falls upon this world in about 3 Earth hours. Thanks, Gaia, he said sourly. She chuckled. At your service, Commander Reyes. And with that, David started across hills and forests, towards the stack of smoke that stretched high into the cloudless blue sky. Meat. She hated meat. She cringed as she lathered the wet slices of Longbach liver in salt. She grabbed a shaker and shook vigorously, adding a coat of various peppers and spices. She almost chuckled at the absurdity of it all. Caterna et al., aide to the Princess of the Kingdom of Ravenia and its outward territories, her undying preeminence and imminent heir to the throne. She spent decades learning the ins and outs of royal politics, serving for 4 years as the princess's closest advisor and her nearest confidant. She once grew tired and weary of those marble walls and the cavernous rooms. Oh, how she longed for the sights and smells of the royal palace. Oh, how far she had fallen. Now she spent her days preparing meat and providing supplies for the lost princess on a porch beside a shack beyond the fringes of all Ravinian civilization. For the better, perhaps, as for her sudden return at this point in time would mean certain death. She hung the meat on a hook alongside its sliced brethren. She turned to peer into the ramshackle hut behind her, where she caught a glimpse of the princess through the window. A thunderous clap exploded from the sky above, suddenly returning Caterna to her senses. Her stomach lurched, and the window behind her shattered. A gust of wind punched through the trees and swept over the grass. She hurried out of the porch and peered into the sky. A spaceship. It zipped across the sky, crumbling and disintegrating the whole way down. She caught the sight of a small, fleeting object quickly separate from the ship, disappearing behind the forest. Not 2 seconds later did she see an explosion beyond the ridge, followed by another loud boom. She stood there, frozen for some time. Had time caught up with them at long last? Had the usurper finally tracked down the one thing he could never possess? She heard the door open behind her, and the slender leg of the princess stepped out, but she quickly pushed her back and slammed the door shut. Princess, you are to stay inside. What has happened, Kaishana? Asked the princess, but Caterna's attention had turned to her double, Lian Vo's son, who rushed back towards the shack from the river, basket in hand. Did you see that? The poor girl asked, breathless. Something emerged from the sky. Yes, I did, Caterna said. Between Lian and she believed herself to be the fiercer. She directed the former towards the shack. Remain here with the princess until I return. I shall investigate the site of the wreckage and assess the intentions of survivors that may lie therein. Is this understood? Wholly understood, Caterna. Nay. Caterna was about to leave when she remembered something. She swiveled around. Lian. Yes. In cabinet within the house, you will find my gun and 12 darts of an archib-tooth toxin. Bring them to me. Lian nodded hurriedly and disappeared inside the house. She emerged mere seconds later with the weapon and its ammunition in hand. Good, Caterna said, grabbing the gun while she loaded the darts. I will be on my way. If I do not return before dusk, I demand you take the princess with you to the village. Understood. Caterna nodded. Without another word, she started towards the plume of smoke that slowly rose into the sky. The wreckage was in sight now. The sun was rapidly disappearing behind a distant mountain range, casting long shadows across the hilly region. The sky, which had just hours earlier been a brilliant hue of blue, had grown darker and grayer. The smoke had disappeared. There was an odd sort of electricity about the world, the buzz of millions of insects and greenery of all kinds. This world teemed with life, and David quite liked it. He strode steadily towards the crash site, his limp cured. The wound in his side, however, seemed to worsen over the duration of his trek. He would have to create some sort of makeshift shelter from the wreckage, assuming it was safe, which it quite easily may not be. Tell me more about this world, Gaia. I have spent the past few hours examining and analyzing various aspects of the environment we found ourselves in. Well, don't leave me hanging, David said. He could clearly distinguish features of the wreckage now, mostly the blackened husk of his craft and large chunks of debris scattered about. The world is quite dense. While I believe this world's circumference to be slightly smaller than that of Venus, its mass appears virtually identical to that of Earth's. Maybe that's why it feels so normal. David thought aloud, more normal than the dozens of space stations he'd been on that attempted to mimic Earth's gravity. He wondered for a moment. Are there any traces of an advanced civilization? Yes, Gaia said, rather gravely. My readings are consistent with those found on secondary worlds. Secondary worlds? The homeworld of a species or civilization is their primary world, Gaia explained. That's where they learned and advanced. These worlds are often brimming with pollutants that I can easily detect, byproducts of the civilization's development over thousands of years. By the time the civilization begins to colonize other worlds, their technological capacity is typically quite high, and the settlement process is far cleaner. David bit his tongue. So, there's an advanced species here that has spacefaring technology, but this isn't their homeworld? That is mostly likely the case, I imagine, Gaia answered. Her voice took on a more gloomy tone. Though I would advise considerable caution. No intelligent species, barring humans, has been known to inhabit a world that contains conditions this comparable to Earth. Noted. This may be a good thing for us yet. The population of this world appears to be quite low-numbering in the mere millions, perhaps. You should be given a wide berth, wide enough to collect your bearings, and the technological presence here indicates that you may be able to depart from this world in a ship. Yeah, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, David said. For now, let's focus on figuring out where we are. The blanket of night had fully fallen upon the landscape. They arrived at the site of the wreckage, where the smoldering ruins of his spacecraft lay. He circled the scene. The flames had since died, and the smoke had long vanished, but warmth still radiated from the metal skeleton. Some sections glowed orange and white with heat. He took a closer look. There was nothing. Not a packet of water, not a bag of dried food, not even his handgun. He let out a frustrated breath. It's all gone, Gaia. That appears to be the case, she said simply. She became dead quiet afterward. David continued to circle the remains of his vessel. He'd occasionally lift a metal plate on the off chance that something had survived, but there was nothing. It appears that one of the missiles detonated at the moment of impact, Gaia quietly observed. The black box should have remained intact. It's just under the pilot controls. David moved towards the controls. The red flight recorder was partially exposed. He removed it from its holding and set it on the grass. What do I need to do? Nothing. I can access it remotely. This will take some time. David let out a sigh. That's all I've got right now. He waited as Gaia went to work. The sky turned black, and the stars became clearly visible. He could see nearly the entire galaxy, yet the stars still seemed further than ever. The planet's twin moons appeared over the horizon shortly afterwards and began their slow journey across the sky. David was able to really think for the first time since he arrived. He contemplated on the war, the battle, his squadron. All of it seemed so distant now. Good men and women were dying up there, giving their lives for the good of mankind. Yet here he was, sitting in a field on some backwater alien world, unable to do much of anything. He was interrupted from his woes by a rustling from somewhere in the tree line. He stood up instantly and scanned the perimeter. Gaia, did you hear something? He demanded quietly. No response. Gaia? Commander Reyes, reconstructing the data stored on the flight log requires an immense degree of processing power. Power that the small chip I'm stored on is having difficulty producing. Now I must... A whistling sound, followed by a stabbing pain in his neck. David immediately grabbed at his neck and felt a long, sharp, metal object embedded in his skin. He quickly pulled it out. A dart, attached to a small vial. It was nearly empty. "Sir," Gaia exclaimed, "a considerable volume of an alien toxin has entered your circulatory system. I sug—" David couldn't make out the rest. The world blurred, and he crumpled to the grass, utterly paralyzed and unable to move. The last thing he saw was a darkened figure emerge from the trees and slowly start towards him.